to that place in us where we're not censoring ourselves or trying to do it good or right, but rather connect to whatever it is we're trying to say.
To the part of us where we're not trying to be good or right or limit ourselves and just say what we want to say. There aren't many views with as much weight as Al Pacino's when it comes to Hollywood legends. I only have my balls and my word in this world, and I don't put from The Godfather to Scarface to Heat. His lava-hot passion and nuanced vulnerability have changed the way movies are acted for more than 50 years. Pacino's electrifying performances come from a fierce, almost religious dedication to the craft. Working with him has been both life-changing and scary for some people because of this devotion. Pacino has worked with famous actors and directors such as Robert De Niro and Sidney Lumet, but not all players have earned his respect as a professional. Some people have felt the quiet intensity of his disapproval, which in the industry's invisible order is both devastating and final. Even though it was said somewhere else, these players were not able to meet Pacino's high standards. He is very honest about the standards he sets for himself. Pacino once said during a rare AFI retrospective that acting is fighting against fake habits until something real comes out. Some people aren't ready for that fight. For these 6 actors, their interactions with Pacino showed not only disagreements at work but also deep-seated differences in how they see art. This created tensions that showed the hidden fault lines that run through Hollywood's smooth surface. Mr. Johnny Depp. The 1997 fight between Johnny Depp and Al Pacino in Donnie Brasco is one of the most interesting examples of how playing styles change over time in movies. Cast as secret FBI agent Joseph Pistone opposite Pacino's old hitman Lefty Ruggiero, Depp came to the set with a reputation for creating strange characters, which was said to confuse Pacino's more realistic style. Years later, director Mike Newell told Empire magazine that Al had expected a different kind of planning. Johnny would use outside information to build Donnie, how they walk, how they make certain movements, and how they speak. For Al, everything had to come from an emotional heart, a psychological identification that was so strong that it was almost like owning something. The main problem became clear in the movie's tense restaurant scene where Lefty teaches Donnie how to behave in a crowd. Donald Graham Burt, the production designer, says that Pacino got more and more angry when Depp walked into a scene with what Pacino saw as technical detachment instead of emotional involvement. For a Vanity Fair oral history, Burt talked about a time between takes when Al looked at Johnny and asked, "Where are you right now? Since you're not with me here." It was dead quiet on the set. While being polite to everyone on set, Pacino's rising frustration with Depp's approach was noticed by the crew. Specifically, Depp's habit of staying partially in character between takes instead of making the full psychological commitment Pacino thought was necessary. It got so tense that producer Barry Levinson allegedly had to step in and calm down a few creative arguments that were about to mess up important scenes. Years later, Pacino said in a vague way to a film student at an acting studio, "Some actors make characters, others show who they are through characters." Leonardo DiCaprio. The trouble starts when those two types try to live in the same world. In February, the rivalry between Al Pacino and Leonardo DiCaprio on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood showed a fascinating look at acting theory across generations. Even though they didn't have any direct scenes together, being in Tarantino's huge Hollywood opus at the same time produced what the crew called parallel universes of preparation that sometimes crashed into each other during production. First assistant director William Paul Clark said that the difference in how they approached things was clear right away. Clark told Total Film magazine that Leo would get there hours early to talk with researchers he hired about historical background and character psychology. Al would show up right on time, take a quick glance to the sides, and then give a performance that seemed so natural that it was impossible he hadn't been practicing for months. This big difference hit its peak during a table read where DiCaprio gave detailed notes on how the business world worked in the late 1960s. Pacino is said to have said, "The research department is down the hall," which was heard by everyone. "We're in the playing gallery now." They didn't agree on anything artistic, not just methods but also basic ideas about performance itself. Arianne Phillips, a costume designer, said that DiCaprio asked for several fittings to find the right physical aspects of his character, while Pacino made choices right away based on how he felt about different wardrobe options. Phillips saw that Leo treated his character like a researcher writing a paper. Al played his like a jazz player, improvising to find the right note at the right time. While being polite, Pacino was overheard in the production office asking longtime collaborator Martin Scorsese what the point of DiCaprio's meticulous preparation was, pointing out that it led to technical precision at the cost of spontaneous life. When asked directly about working with DiCaprio, Pacino said the most telling thing: each group has to find the wheel on their own. Some need to check the size of each spoke before they start moving. Tom Cruise. During pre-production for Michael Mann's thriller Collateral in 2002-2003, Tom Cruise's famous intensity and Al Pacino's raw emotional approach clashed wildly, making one of Hollywood's most interesting casting reversals. At first, Cruise was supposed to play the philosophical hitman Vincent opposite Pacino as the tired cab driver. However, his methodical and control-focused approach is said to have caused problems right away during character workshops. Casting director Francine Masseler told The Hollywood Reporter that Tom came in with this very full history of Vincent. He knew a lot about hired killers, had studied their minds, and had even trained with gun experts. Al felt uncomfortable as he watched the presentation and finally said, "I don't need to know where the character went to elementary school. I need to know how he's feeling right now." Cruise's careful planning and Pacino's natural immersion are said to have clashed in a fundamental way, leading to a tense improvisational exercise in which Pacino forgot the script completely to get real responses. Mann, who later reorganized the production in a more diplomatic way, said that Pacino was clearly annoyed by what he saw as Cruise's acting style, speaking between takes. "It's great that you have so much homework, but you need to end this and burn down the library." Their different philosophical views were made even more clear by the way they played their roles physically. Pacino's more natural, less choreographed moves stood in stark contrast to Cruise's more carefully planned ones. Janina Powell, a production designer who saw early camera tests, said that Tom wanted every move to be planned out and practiced until it was perfect. Al thought that being so precise was against the truth. Because of the creative deadlock, the movie was famously rearranged so that Cruise played the hitman and Pacino played the cab driver instead of Jamie Foxx. A change in the group that changed the whole project. When asked about Cruise years later at the Venice Film Festival, Pacino gave the most honest answer: "There are artists who build lovely homes. Even if the furniture gets broken sometimes, I like the people who live there better." Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey's calculated accuracy made it impossible for him and Al Pacino to work together on the 1992 filming of Glengarry Glen Ross, which showed how different their artistic beliefs were at their core. The movie was based on David Mamet's Pulitzer Prize-winning play about a desperate real estate seller. Spacey played the cold, efficient office manager and Pacino played Ricky Romo, the salesman who starts to lose it. Director James Foley said that their different approaches produced an interesting tension that went beyond the planned conflict. Foley said in a Directors Guild review that Kevin would approach scenes like a chess player, planning several moves ahead of time. Al only used his gut and his emotional link to do his job. He thought Kevin's analytical way of thinking was almost bad for the artistic process. The conflict reached a boiling point in the movie's most important fight scene, where crew members said Pacino was getting more and more angry at Spacey's commanding performance. Jane Muskie, a production artist, remembered a very tense time. After Kevin gave a perfectly modulated performance in one take, Al grabbed James and said, "He's not acting, he's demonstrating acting." This was said out loud so everyone could hear. After that, the set felt like it was on fire. Their moral differences also showed up in the way they practiced. Diane Dreyer, who was in charge of the scripts, said that Spacey would carefully mark his script with technical notes about pacing and focus. This clearly annoyed Pacino, who liked to find the emotional truth of the scene as it happened. They were from two very different schools, as co-star Ed Harris pointed out. Kevin planned his act with the accuracy of an architect. Al went about his like a method jazz artist, going with his feelings no matter where they took him. When asked directly about working with Spacey years later, Pacino made the most telling comment during a master class at an acting school: "Some players act while others show. People can always tell the difference." Robert Downey Jr. Dustin Hoffman's famous need to be perfect and Al Pacino's more natural way of working didn't get along at all during their short time working together on Sidney Lumet's unfinished Project Attica in 1974. Creating one of the most interesting artistic divorces in Hollywood. At first it was planned to be a powerful drama about the famous jail uprising. However, the production failed because the actors who were supposed to play the lead roles had very different philosophical views. They were acting in ways that were very different from each other. Lumet later told his historian Morris Spiegel what he had done. Dustin had to understand every reason and psychic detail. He would question the smallest things for hours on end. Al wanted to live in the character's inner reality without thinking about it too much. During the first character workshops where Hoffman allegedly came with a lot of prison study, sociological data and detailed questions about character biography, this methodological gap became clear. Alan Hopkins, an assistant director who saw their first meetings, said that Pacino became more distant as Hoffman explained his measured approach. Finally bursting with the thought, "We're not doing exams here. It's our job to bring something to life." The tension rose when Hoffman suggested shooting in real prisons in order to show how the characters really changed over time. Pacino laughed this idea off as not understanding the terrain or the map. Anna Hill Johnstone, a production artist, remembered the breaking point. During an improvisation practice, Dustin kept pausing to think about what was going on. Al finally threw up his hands and told her, "You have to stop making the violin and play the music already." Jared Leto. During the making of House of Gucci in 2021, Jared Leto's immersive method techniques made it impossible for him to work with Al Pacino. This showed a generational clash in acting ideas that interested people in the business. Leto was cast as Paolo Gucci opposite Aldo Gucci, played by Pacino. When he got to the set, he had already gone through his usual physical changes, including makeup, accent work, and the controversial habit of staying in character between takes. Production designer Arthur Max says that Pacino quickly went from being interested in Leto's method to being visibly annoyed by it. Max told Variety that Al became more and more skeptical as he watched Jared's complicated routine for getting ready. The tension was at its highest when they were shooting the scenes where they had a fight with their son. Giuseppe Bonifazi, the first assistant director, remembered a very telling moment. After a take where Jared stayed in character as Paolo while they talked about making some technical changes, Al told Ridley Scott, "Tell the kid the scene is over." This was said loud enough for everyone to hear. Now he can come back. Pacino's disagreements with these 6 actors showed a big gap between acting's technical accuracy and its emotional truth. Each act got in trouble with him not because they weren't good enough, but because they had very different ideas about art. In Pacino's world, being real means getting rid of fakery instead of making it better. A lesson that goes beyond acting and gets to the heart of how people connect with each other. Click the subscribe button to get more in-depth looks at cinema's hidden battlegrounds if you liked learning about these interesting creative conflicts.